All right, guys, let me explain this book a little bit to you. You may have already received one of these. If not, encourage you to grab one next time you come to church. They're free, and we want you to have one. We're encouraging us as a church to embrace the challenge of reading through the Bible this year. Maybe you've never read through the Bible cover to cover. Well, hopefully 2023 that will change. This is a very achievable goal. It's going to take some commitment. It's going to take some work for sure, but it's doable. People do it all the time, and we're encouraging you to do it this year. And so to help you do that, we've got some resources for you. This is kind of the main resource. And so once you get this book, I just want to explain real quick in this video what's inside this book. If you open it up, the first thing you'll see is the 365 Bible reading plan. This is a day-by-day plan that will help you read through the whole Bible in 1 year. And you'll see it averages about 3 chapters a day. That's 3-4 chapters a day will get you through the Bible in 1 year. And so that can, it's estimated at about 12 minutes of reading per day. But there's some other things that you can do to facilitate that as well that I'm going to talk about in other videos. But you'll see here, there are different plans. And on the Bible app that we'll show you in another video, there are different plans for reading through the Bible. You can find different plans online. Many Bibles have a plan for reading through the Bible printed in them. The one we went with is just straight through the Bible. You're just going to start in the beginning and you're going to read through to the end. The other options are there are chronological ways to read through the Bible, chronological plans that will take you through, chronologically, obviously, from beginning to end. And believe it or not, that's straightforward, doesn't do that. And I'm not going to explain that in this video. There are reasons for that. And there's other ways to read through the Bible where you read a little bit from the Old Testament each day and a little bit from the New Testament. All of these plans have pros and cons. This one we went with because we want you to start with a book and only read that book until you're done. And so you're going to read straight through Genesis, you'll see. And that will take you down through the first 17 days of the year. And you're going to read straight through Exodus. I think one of the advantages of that is that's the best way to digest a book. If you read a couple chapters of Genesis and then you read a Psalm like some plans and then you read a couple chapters in Matthew, you're kind of all over the place in a short amount of time. And so I like this. Again, there are pros and cons. There's reasons to do it the other ways as well. But this is the way that we've chosen to do this year. One of the things about doing it this way, though, is that you will be in the Old Testament all the way until October 7th. And so we don't get to the New Testament until this fall. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be reading the New Testament in the meantime. That doesn't mean you won't be in the New Testament in other ways. For example, we'll be preaching through Colossians, which is a New Testament book, this winter. And so certainly not going to stay away from the New Testament between now and then. But in terms of this reading plan, you're going to start in Genesis, and it'll be October 7th before you finish up the Old Testament. Your little check boxes here, I think, make it nice just to keep up. One of the weird things this plan does do is in some places it splits chapters. It looks like they always do that at intentional places. And so that's okay. It'll read just as well, but it's, to me, a little confusing. I'd rather read to the end of the chapter each day, but it tells you exactly where to be. So if you just follow that plan, certainly you don't have to read every day. You can choose to do that this week's reading all at once, or however you want to do it. But this is the pace that we need to go at in order to get through the whole Bible in a year. And so you need to kind of stay on track in terms of week by week in order to do this well. If you get behind, which everybody will at some point, don't get discouraged. I'll give you some tips and tricks on how to catch up and get back on track in some other videos. Okay, so that's the first thing you see in the book, the reading plan, which is at the beginning of the book. It'll always be easy to get to. And then the rest of the book, here you have the books of the Old Testament, which if you don't have that committed to memory, that might be fun to do this year and become more familiar with the order of the books of the Old Testament, but not necessary. But beyond that, you'll see the rest of this book is 3 pages committed to each book of the Bible. And the first page that you see here for Genesis tells you where it is in the order of the Old Testament books. Obviously, this is the first book of the Bible, how many chapters, the type of book that it is. This is a historical book. It tells the history of the world and of Israel. And it also is part of the Pentateuch, which is that 5-book collection that starts the Bible off. All 5 of these books written by Moses. We talked about that a little bit in Deuteronomy. But generally it'll just say like history or poetic or something along those lines, wisdom literature. So then you have kind of I'm sorry, I skipped this. There's a quick 1-paragraph overview, when it was written, the time period covered, the author, and then just a basic breakdown of the book. This is a 50-chapter book that has been broken down into a nice little chart here that just lets you know the flow of the book. The book starts out telling the story of creation to the Tower of Babel, and then it focuses on the life of Abraham, then the life of Isaac, then the life of Jacob, and then the life of Joseph. And so you'll see that sort of summary for every book of the Bible as you go through. And then the next 2 pages that you will see, this page is very similar to the last one, just a different format and a more detailed breakdown of the entire book, which I love. This is really helpful. A lot of this information is a repeat of what was on the previous page. But then there's also some most popular verses down here at the bottom. The third page that you'll see for every book of the Bible is this learning lookups, where you can quiz yourself. And there's some questions, usually about 10 questions here. There's even a word bank to choose from, the references, if you get stuck, where to find those. But it's kind of cool just to quiz yourself to see how you're doing, make sure you're picking up on some of the important information. And some of it's just fun. It's not always the important information. I probably shouldn't say it that way, but it's just a good way to test your learning and to deepen your learning. The answers for that are in the very back of the book. That's the very last thing in the book. So everything else in this book is those 3 pages for every book of the Bible. So here you have Exodus, learning lookups for Exodus, Leviticus overviews, learning lookups for Leviticus. That's it. That's the rest of this book. And so this is just a nice guide to have as you go through each book of the Bible this year as we read through the Bible together. One thing to note, these page numbers are meaningless. That's you probably can't see it on the video, but that says 8, that says 6, this says 7, this also says 7. That's because these are actually 3 different PDF books that we put together. We did not create this material, we purchased it and then put it together in this book, which took a lot of time and effort by 2 people specifically, and that's Pastor Marty. He did a lot of the design work that you see here on the cover and made this Bible reading plan, which was a pretty tedious task. And then India did the printing and put all of this together, which was a ton of work. And so thank them when you see them. But I think the end result is well worth it. This is a great guide to help you through the Bible. So that's everything you'll find in this book. And then partway through the year, we'll bust out the New Testament version of this. We didn't want to put it all in one. We didn't want it to be too thick of a book to manage. But you'll get the New Testament version a little bit later in the year. So please consider joining us and spending the year in the Word together with us. Let me know if you have any questions.